loaded up, so I should be able to just exit out here and click right over. So it should be good.
If you have a cell phone, would you please place it on silent so there's no interruptions?
Can you hear me?
Good enough. Good evening. Welcome to the Coffeyville City Commission meeting for Tuesday, February 13th, 2018. Tonight's invocation will be led by Pastor Mark Wilson, the First Church of God. Please stand for the invocation and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Our Father God, we thank you. We thank you so much for just your presence here in this place. We thank you for the health and strength. We have been hit so hard by so much sickness across the country, and we're so thankful we're able to make this meeting. We thank you for being involved in our life, Lord, for calling us to yourself, for calling us to a revival of our recognition of who you are in our life as Lord and Savior, as friend. And we thank you, Lord, for the power invested in these leaders in the community. And we ask, Lord, there would be a clarity tonight. There would be a purpose and a direction that we've never known before. And there would be a collaboration and a pulling together, Lord, of our whole community. We thank you for that, Lord. We thank you for your love. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor.
You're very welcome.
Mayor,
Yes.
if I could, I need to make you aware that we're experiencing no sound on Channel 13.
Okay.
Apparently it is an issue with Cox, and obviously we have sound here and streaming, but the video is fine, but we don't have sound right now on Channel 13.
Okay. Thank you. Tonight's consent agenda. Item number 1, City Commission meeting minutes for Tuesday, January 23rd, 2018, and 2018 appropriation ordinance number AO-18-03 in the amount of $1,754,878.74. Are there any questions or amendments to these first two items on the agenda?
I have none. We have none, and I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion was made by Commissioner Taylor and seconded by Mayor Bauer to approve the consent agenda as presented. Mayor Bauer,
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Commissioner Doan,
Aye.
Commissioner Van Oster.
Aye.
2018 appropriation ordinance number AO-18-03A, Iron Time Sales in the amount of $214.64. Are there any questions or amendments that need to be made to this agenda item? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number AO-18-03A.
I'll second. Sorry.
Anne Marie.
I'll second. I gotta talk louder.
Motion was made by Mayor Bauer and seconded by Commissioner Van Oster to approve appropriation ordinance number AO-18-03A for adoption. Mayor Bauer,
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor,
Abstain.
Commissioner Williams,
Aye.
Commissioner Doan,
Aye.
Commissioner Van Oster.
Aye.
Under public hearing, special presentation and proclamations, Trish Purden, Montgomery County Action Council will make comments regarding Renew's industrial revenue. Not following.
Shocked me. Hopefully I didn't fry the computer. Make sure I got it maximized here. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you very much for having us here. Back in October, we announced our newest industry that came to Coffeyville, announced they're coming to Coffeyville as Renew Industry. The owner and his team is here to speak with you for a minute. But first, I wanted to give you a little bit of an overview of what we're doing today. Renews, when we first started recruiting them 2 years ago, and I'll go through the timeline here in a minute, we offered them a set of incentives, and one of which was an industrial revenue bond. And in case you're not aware what an industrial revenue bond is, it is an incentive that would provide a 10-year property tax abatement and a sales tax exemption. However, in the last few days, we have gone through a cost-benefit analysis of our own on how much it would cost them to get this revenue bond, considering it's such a small amount. And we realized that it would be a significant savings for them, especially as far along in the project as they are, to go ahead and go forward with an EDX, and that's an economic development exemption. And that's a Kansas state statute that covers incentives, and they're really geared towards the smaller industries. So with that, I'll go ahead and go into this. They provided a video, so you're a little bit more familiar with what Renews does. They do all sorts of different powder coatings, dip coatings, spray coatings, industrial coatings for several of our industries. And I have to say, it's probably one of the most exciting industries we've recruited as Montgomery County Action Council in the city of Coffeyville in quite some time. And that's because this industry has an impact on several of our industries. We know Acme Foundry, John Deere, Matcor, as well as several others have had conversations with Renews that could result in significant cost savings for our local industries. So we're very excited to have them here. So with that, I'll give you a presentation on what exactly Renews does. Play. Nope, it didn't play. Let's try this again. I think your mouse isn't on, that's why. No. It's not playing. Ah. Okay, well, hold on. I'll have to improvise. Give me 1 second. I don't know why the video's not playing, but I can pull it up on there.
That's why you're so good at what you do.
Yeah, right. Is the sound not gonna play to this system? Will it not play? How do I get it to? It's only set to your computer, I think. Nope. Sorry for the technical difficulties.
It's a learning process.
Can you hear it? Maybe I can do this. You can hear it?
Yeah.
Renews is your one-stop provider for industry-leading manufacturing, fabrication, product assembly and integration, and all manner of industrial coatings. We have over 30 years experience painting all types of parts, vehicles, commercial equipment, and machinery. With 5 plants in 2 states, Renew stands ready to meet your prep and coatings requirements. Many of our customers are international industry-leading enterprises or their suppliers. Renews routinely meets their demanding specifications and consistently delivers high-end durable industrial painting. Renew's Industrial Coating Division features 2 60 by 15 booths with 160-degree drying capabilities, 2 automated wet paint lines measuring over 1,400 feet, 3-stage iron phosphate wash, soon to be upgraded to 6-stage, a dry-off oven, 3 state-of-the-art application booths, and gas-fired cure ovens. Renew's Powder Coat Division consists of 2 powder coat lines totaling 1,800 feet, with 3 to 6-stage wash, primer, and top coat capabilities. Features of these lines include primer reciprocators, IR and gas-fired cure ovens with drying capabilities in excess of 500 degrees, as well as one of Georgia's largest monorail batch systems. Renews uses only the finest paint and powder coating materials available. Polyurethane powders are applied with
Well, that's what happens when we use YouTube, right? Buffering. Sorry. Right in the middle of the exciting part. Lester told me, actually what's funny is Lester told me where this is an older video. They cut this piece where this man is sitting down, so of course that's where it buffers. So it's to point out my mistake. There's 2 videos, and one is a newer version, and it's a bigger megabyte file, and it wouldn't load in their presentation, so. Come on. You're on the internet, right, Kendall? Well, I'll talk while it's doing this, and then if it loads, I'll get back to it so we don't waste time. This company, we're very excited to have them in the industrial park, and if you're not aware, they bought the former Darwin, pull this back up again, the former Darwin building, which is in the median of the Coffeyville Industrial Park in between John Deere and MJD Products. The company has started work. They started in October. But to give you a quick overview of the timeline, which is in the presentation, but I'll get to it in a minute, they actually approached Montgomery County Action Council, at the time Aaron Heckman, back in May of 2016. So you can tell this process has taken quite some time to be accomplished. We did site selection, the city and MAC together did some site selection, looked at several different building options around Coffeyville, but they really wanted to make sure they were in Coffeyville when they came. Throughout that process, they started negotiations with several of the customers that I mentioned before, specifically John Deere, as they are John Deere's primary paint company. So the John Deere green is what Renews can do. So we're very excited to see that. As the year went on, we had further discussions about the property, what might work, what might work. We talked about building a new building, and we just kept coming back to the Darwin building. And if we get to it, you can kind of see why. If you've ever been in the Darwin building in this video, I've mentioned to Lester that the building looks eerily similar to the Darwin building, so I can see why when they saw that building, how well it worked for them. So we finally decided on the Darwin building. Summer of 2017, they put in an offer. August of 2017, they finally closed on the building after their 90 days due diligence. And then on October, once they were kind of ready to pull the trigger, after all the building permits, environmental permits, EPA, KDHE obviously had some permitting to go forward with them with paint operations. They satisfied all of those requirements, and they were able to finally make their announcement in October. So we're very happy to introduce you guys then, but again, we have them here today. Since that point, we've had a job fair, which I would have to say is probably one of the most successful job fairs I've seen personally. We ended up having like 175 applicants or something like that. But in the first 45 minutes, we had 75 of those applicants. When I pulled up almost an hour after the job fair had started, and there was a line of cars wrapped around the Coffeyville Industrial Park median. You couldn't hardly drive out of the industrial park. In fact, MJD Products called me and asked what was going on because they couldn't hardly get into their parking lot. There were so many cars out there. So we had a great turnout. They did job interviews on the spot. They've hired 9 of the initial 14 they wanted to get hired, and they have a few more specialty positions that they're looking for some skilled labor for. Don't know why it's still not.
Tricia, that's not an internet problem. That's YouTube has frozen.
Okay, well, let me refresh. There we go.
Capabilities. Features of these lines include primer and reciprocators, IR and gas-fired cure ovens with drying capabilities in excess of 500 degrees, as well as one of Georgia's largest monorail batch systems. Renews uses only the finest paint and powder coating materials available. Polyurethane powders are applied with electrostatic spray guns in a well-grounded, clean environment to ensure consistent wraparound coverage. We also specialize in all manner of blasting and surface preparation, from common sanding to specialized media blasting. Renews takes great pride in our ISO 9001-2008 certification. Quality assurance personnel continually audit every phase of production. We adhere to these ISO standards to ensure quality management principles that consistently provide our customers with products and services that meet or exceed their expectations. At Renews, you'll discover value-added logistics services on par with our paint capabilities. We can get product to our customers where it needs to be, when it needs to be there. Whether bulk shipment or just-in-time inventory, Renews can meet the deadline. For Renews, customer satisfaction is our primary task. We deliver on time, all the time. We strive to ensure that all product is turned quickly and according to delivery dates, with most customers featuring 100% on-time deliveries. We also excel in turning those unplanned hot shipment orders that can be a nightmare for customers into just another job well done. Renews will consistently go the extra mile to make sure our customers' requirements are met. From a small, one-bay paint and body shop in Sunnyside, Georgia in 1981, Lester Renew's strong work ethic, leadership, and commitment to customer satisfaction has enabled Renew's companies to successfully grow into 10 industrial divisions in 2 states. Our goal is to achieve excellence in everything we do. Let us serve your needs with quality product solutions. Renews, your product solutions company.
Thank you for your patience there. So we kind of already discussed the timeline here, but after the job fair, they got the construction started. They used as many local contractors as they possibly could. I know they used Decker Construction, as well as some few others to do some of the dirt work, the pit work, cement work that they had. Let's see, make sure this is maximized here. Then lastly, we have spring of 2018, we'll have the facility opening. So we're very excited about that, and I'll let Lester kind of talk about that piece. So overview project, it'll be 34 jobs over 5 years. Average salary will be $27,942. Starting wage of $24,480. And the total company investment will be $3.4 million into this facility and all the equipment and renovations. So to go over the incentives that we did offer Renews, and this would have been 2 years ago. And thankfully, the city of Coffeyville does have our economic development incentive guidelines that the commission thoughtfully improved in August of 2014. So we were able to follow the standard incentive package that we follow for every single proposal that comes in front of us. So in this case, we're going to be using an EDX, which is an economic development exemption. It allows the company to have a 10-year property tax abatement on existing or new construction projects. It is a statutory state economic development incentive. It's very effective for small businesses versus a large businesses that could use an industrial revenue bond for the much higher cost for the project. And I will say that we've worked out to reduce the impact on our local school districts and the college. We have some interlocal agreements that we're working on where they would not be impacted in this exemption. Since it is an existing property, we wouldn't want the school districts or the college to have to foot that bill for this incentive. We also have the Targeted Industry Economic Development Incentive Package. It's a mouthful. We offered them $1,000 per job, and that's because this is a heavily targeted industry versus the $750. We went to the top end of our range. We also offered them a $250 bonus. For every employee that they hire that either moves to or lives in Montgomery County, at the end of the year, they'll get a $250 bonus for that employee. And this will span for 5 years and into 6 if they haven't satisfied their 34 employees by that point. And then we'll also get an economic development electric rate discount. And basically how that's going to work is, due to the way the state laws works, they will have to do a pilot to pay the taxes for CCC and the school district, and we're going to offset that cost with their electric discount in that about that same amount. So it'll offset, so they won't have that cost. Then lastly, the county matched what the city did, but at their standard, which is $750 per job, and that'll be payable at the end of the year. So once they confirm, they turn in their Kansas job reports, shows that they have so many employees. They'll get $750 per employee, and that will go over 6 years, 5 years, and then an additional year. If they haven't met the 34, they'll extend that one more year. And the same thing, $250 local employee bonus. At the end of each year, they'll get that cash bonus back to the company, and they can use those cash incentives in any way what they want to use them. So they can use them to reimburse for equipment, machinery, personnel costs, training costs, and then the state of Kansas also put together an incentive package, but that information is confidential. So we have some experts here to provide some guidance. We are going to have to do a special hearing for an economic development exemption, but because it's not an IRB, and that's what we set the public notice for, we have to do it at a different date. However, we already had the cost-benefit analysis completed for the IRB, and it's the exact same benefit analysis. So with that, I'm going to introduce Ben Hart from Springstead, and he's going to go over the cost-benefit analysis that we had done for this project.
Thank you, Tricia. Ben Hart from Springstead Incorporated, and I won't be long. In your packet, you've got a report. What it's required to do, because it is an EDX or a tax abatement, you're required to do a cost-benefit analysis on it to make sure that it's a reasonable payback period. And I can assure you, based on our analysis, it is a reasonable payback period under the eyes of the law, and I'm not a lawyer, that's the reason. Ms. Steele's coming up next. But in our analysis, we go through and look at the benefits to the city. When I say benefits to the city, that really means the revenues coming in as a result of Renews putting their plant here. And it also looks at the cost of providing that service, a service from the city to Renew as a result of them being here. And then the net between the two of them right now is in your packet. It's actually 165,000 over a 10-year period. So it's a positive benefit, obviously, when you net that out. Because of net present value, you calculate it in today's dollars, it's around 128,000 for the city, and that's just the city. Within our packet, or your packet as well, the last page of our analysis goes through each one of the taxing jurisdiction and does the same thing. So with that, the payback period and the number of years as a result of the tax abatement is less than 10 years. In our calculations, it's closer to 3 to 4 year payback period. So what the revenue's coming back into the city, you're going to be able to retain that. You're going to be able to recover that in about 3 to 4 years. So that's the gist of our cost benefit analysis.
Okay. Well, I'm all for this deal, okay, but I got a question or two for you. Where are you from, Ben, Mr. Hart?
From Kansas City,
Okay. You've done quite a few of these.
we have.
But out of just, it has nothing to do with their deal, okay?
Sure.
But what percentage of these are you right on? How many are you wrong on? Can you give us a little history? How
We-
many of these
Sure.
economic development deals, whether it's the EDX or another one, have you done, your company?
Right. And what we try to do is stay conservative. So what you realize is going to be higher than what our numbers are going to be. So we try to stay extremely conservative. So if anything, I would say more than likely our numbers are going to be low. So the benefit of the city, the net benefit of the city would be low over that 10-year period. Now, there's other factors that obviously we can't control, whether it's a recession that happened in 2008 or other factors that natural disasters, things that obviously aren't in our control, that aren't contemplated within this paperwork. But I say the overwhelming majority of what our projects have would tend to be on the low side.
So how many has your firm done? 100 of them, or?
Are we in the area? I've personally done anywhere from 20 to 30 of them in my prior positions prior to Springstead. And I'd say over half of them are on the low side.
And have any of them failed?
Not that I'm aware of, but they had opportunity to.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, sure,
About the industry, okay?
sure, yeah,
About your business,
yeah.
okay?
And just understand that these are estimates. That's a great point. These are estimates in today's environment. They take a look at what cost the city has to provide the service, as well as the revenues coming in.
Thank you, Mr. Hart.
You're welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right, next up, we'll have Sarah Steele from Gilmore and Bell come up, and she'll talk about the process of going through an EDX and the legal side of this process.
Thank you, Tricia. I'm Sarah Steele with Gilmore and Bell out of Wichita. We serve as bond counsel to the city. And we're here this evening after having had a meeting this afternoon, kind of switch gears and determine that this project qualifies for the economic development exemption. It's a much more streamlined process than issuing industrial revenue bonds, although IRBs are near and dear to my heart. And so we will be back in late March. March 27 is the date that we plan to provide a notice for a public hearing. And then we will have first reading of an ordinance that actually grants this exemption. That second reading then and final passage presumably will be at your meeting on April 10. And that's all the action that the city will ever have to take on this project. So we'll hold a public hearing like we'd contemplated doing tonight, but with proper notice, and do that March 27. The process is very simple. The city makes certain findings by resolution and then grants the exemption by ordinance. An EDX is more difficult to meet the requirements on, but this project, based on our discussion, clearly meets those requirements as a manufacturing entity. They have the operator is the owner of the facility, so there's no dual use that your Board of Tax Appeals looks at. And, clearly falls within this easier method of granting this property tax exemption pursuant to the incentives. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
The city has no liability.
No, sir. There will not be,
Financial.
cities have no liability on industrial revenue bonds, but there will not be any bonds issued. This is simply a mechanism under the Kansas Constitution and statutes that allows the city the power to grant the exemption for a new business and coming into town. So, city has no liability whatsoever.
Sound like you've done a few of these too, Mrs. Steele.
I have.
Any other questions? No questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, I will introduce Lester Renew, the owner of this company, so that he can give a little bit of an overview of the project and take the questions.
Thank you, Trish. I'm Lester Renew. Basically, we're about 2 weeks from starting. Got it going, and we're excited. Everybody's been a pleasure to work with. Kendall, Trish, everybody's just been unbelievable. Been in quite a few different towns and cities, and I'd have to say by far this has been probably one of the best ones we've worked with. So thank you for that. Is there any questions? I mean, we've got the equipment set up, we've got everything done, and like I said, we've got to test it. We're going to charge the system in a couple of weeks, and we're going to start training and teaching people here within the next, well, we're looking for the 5th is what we're looking for to start, and that'll be the first week we crank this thing up. And then we'll bring in, basically we'll just bring in the first load, and then we'll just start adding to it. And then, hopefully we'll be at 50 or 60 a day soon. So it'll pick up.
Well, this thing will get started with or without us, won't it, Lester?
Yes, sir, it's got to. We ain't got much choice now.
I agree. So, yeah, I can't speak for the rest of the group here, but I know my job's going to become a little easier with you being across the street from me. So,
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. John Deere's been a pleasure to work with, and we think we got a lot of opportunities in this part. Out here in the Midwest, this is our first time being out this far, and we kind of southeast part of the country, and we are in Texas. We have just recently went into Lafayette, Indiana. And then here at Coffeyville, so it will give us 4 locations. And we really have like 5 locations in Georgia, but they're all within 10 or 15 miles of each other. But it's a pretty large deal. Started off with 1 employee, which was me, and we got about 300 employees today. So
yeah, that's great.
Very good.
Congratulations.
thank you.
Any other questions?
Any questions or anything?
When can we come out for a tour?
We'd love to have you out, probably on the 5th.
All right.
Yeah, we'd like to do that.
Okay.
Some food?
Probably.
Leave it to Jim for some food.
You haven't voted yet, Lester.
Any suggestions?
Barbecues.
Yeah, okay, good, yeah, we can do that.
We're from the South, we barbecue. We just
Sarah's back there shaking her head, no.
We probably, all jokes aside, we probably will do something kind of like a little grand opening maybe, just to invite everybody out. We'd like to get up and running, get our 5S programs in place, make sure everything's 100% the way we're gonna run the business, and then that's when we'd like for y'all to come in. So probably towards end of March maybe, early April, we'll probably do something like that.
It's a nice looking place. I was out there looking pretty good,
Thank you,
Lester.
thank you.
Thank you, sir.
thank you.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank y'all.
Very much.
Good luck.
Is that it, Trish? That is it. All right.
Questions for me?
I have none. Any other questions from the commission for Trish?
No. None at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let me set up your presentation here again.
Montgomery County Collaboration Presentation. Kendall Francis will make comments, and Brooke Carroll of Cherryville City Administrator will make a presentation. Or at least that's what you have on my paper, I'll put it that way.
Yeah, Mayor and Commission, I do not see Brooke in attendance, so.
Safe travels, guys.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Hopefully we don't have the same kind of technical difficulties. There's no videos and all. Yeah, exactly.
No videos, no.
I think I'm gonna sit down and talk from over there. Mayor and Commission, as you're aware, for the past year, just a little over a year, the governing entities in Montgomery County oh, that's not good. Just when I say we're not going to have any technical difficulties.
I think I can fix it.
Have been meeting together in a collaborative effort to try to improve communication, try to learn and figure out ways that we can work together better, create efficiencies, hopefully find some cost savings for the taxpayers of Montgomery County and each of the cities. And we thought it was time that we'd come before you and kind of give you a report of what we've been doing. Like I said, we've been meeting monthly for just a little over a year. Tonight we have Kelly Pasur, who is the Assistant City Manager in Independence, and Fred Gress, who is the City Administrator of Caney. They're two of the active members, and I think also we have Mike Pasur, who's been attending the meetings, Jerry Harrison, who is the Police Chief in Independence, of course myself, Stephanie Richardson attend, and a few of our other staff members, Chuck Shively, Jim Bradshaw, but like I said, there are representatives from every one of the governing entities, but I'll just turn it over to them. They'll share with you what they have.
There's another one. Montgomery County does send usually representation to the meetings as well.
That's true.
I am Fred Gress. I'm City Administrator in Caney, and I am a lot taller and not nearly as pretty as Brooke, so don't mistake who I am, okay? But I have been going to the meetings. I've missed some because of issues we do have in Caney occasionally. But this has really been an eye-opener for, I think, a lot of us, if we simply will admit it. The amount of things that we can identify that we've done in a cooperative manner is just amazing. I know I can't say thank you enough to Coffeyville for all the times you used to bring your Vector truck down when we were standing knee-deep in not real pleasant water. So, but since then, it helped us identify and purchase a Vector truck for ourselves, so which has truly been a blessing. And then there's water line leaks that we've had assistance from not only Coffeyville but Independence as well. And so it's been a real great adventure, and I think the end results are just going to be terrific. Kendall told you basically what the overview, the purpose of the organization is, and I can't really add anything to it. Accomplishments, very quickly, several cities have hosted training opportunities and made them available to member cities. There's been ethics training, there's been NIMS training. We had the Hester shooting emergency preparedness folks down, and that was a huge eye-opener for, I think, all of us as to the impact that can have on your community. And I know there's another one coming in the near future. So we did have a USDA workshop in Cherryville that, of course, USDA can provide a lot of money for all of us if you go through their application format, which is all on the computer now, so drive you nuts. It works. And then the other accomplishment I will mention is housing, and I know Caney has a huge housing need. We have some housing issues that through the group we're going to try and get on top of and figure out how we can move forward. So without the group, you're kind of out there on your own, but this is a great opportunity to share concerns and share approaches, and we hope to continue and continue to find ways that we can share expenses and make things better for everybody. Group purchases, I know the county sold a generator to the city of Cherryvale. I tried to buy a generator from Independence and the Housing Authority stole it out from under me, but that's okay.
It may be available for sale again.
I got a brand new one now, so. Greenbush came down, made a presentation, and Independence was able to take advantage of their copy machine programs.
Good.
And someday I'm gonna have to do that. And then I've already mentioned that we've gotten support from both City of Coffeyville and Independence on water and sewer issues on numerous occasions. And it helped when we finally got finances in place and were able to find a good company that we could buy used equipment from and have a lot of faith in. It was already been introduced. Cherryville brought them down, hosted a presentation, and since then I've bought, the city of Caney has bought 3 pieces of equipment for them, and we couldn't be more pleased with the quality of the equipment. So things like that are helping all of us, and we just want to continue, and someday we probably want to get all of you together with all the other elected officials and let you network, and it's just pretty darn amazing what we all can learn. So with that,
I went through today and some of the minutes from our meetings, and I was actually told Kendall, I sent him an email and said, wow, we actually have done a lot more than, when you start going through the minutes and you see all the stuff you've done, you're like, wow, we've talked about a lot of stuff. So I've just kind of bullet pointed some of this. Our first meeting was in November of 2016, so it's actually been over a year that we've been meeting. Generally monthly, but sometimes not, depending on, if there's something going on and we can't always get together, but pretty consistently. And we talked a lot about equipment sharing, bidding out asphalt work. He mentioned the Greenbush program did save us a lot of money on our copier, like over $1,000. And then as we talked about asbestos sampling, going together on natural gas transportation. You'll see housing a lot. They talked a lot about housing and different things that they're working on. We did participate, I think most of the communities participated in the Waste Tire Grant program, where we had drop-offs in the different communities. That was discussed and coordinated in this with this group. And we discussed some ADA training and some things that we could purchase together, like gasoline, equipment sharing. Again, you'll see a lot of the same things again, but it will be different, maybe different equipment. And then the ethics training that he mentioned. And we discussed the emergency communications or consolidated 911 at our May meeting. We also discussed some additional trainings. Fred had some things on a mail-in ballot. I mean, we kind of bounce ideas off of each other too. It's like, oh God, have you guys done this? And we share resources. So other than the meetings, we're also emailing each other constantly back and forth. Hey, what do you guys do on this or that? So it's really opened up a lot of networking between all of us too. And and as you see, you go through August, September, October, we've got a lot more, trainings and different things they're working on. And MCAC is also part of this group. They come to the meetings. They update us on things like the Tyson project and things like that. So this is just kind of a brief review of a lot of the things we have covered over a little bit over a year. Kendall's was very instrumental in getting this going. I will say that, and he kind of keeps us on task. So if you have any questions or anything, that we'd be happy to answer. And we have some projects we're working on in the future. The Wellness Coalition, SEK Drug Task Force, more ADA compliance, minimum housing standards, the neighborhood revitalization zones, and the other grant and training opportunities. So again, if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer them. We brought reinforcements in case we need them, and Tricia's here too. She's part of that group as well since she snuck back in. That's okay.
I don't really have any questions, but it's nice to see the collaboration between all the communities. So I know when we discussed this a long time ago to start driving for this, to get these meetings going, we sometimes all in our own communities get caught in a funnel or tunnel vision. We look at what affects us, and it's good to see that what affects us is probably affecting Independence and Caney and Cherryville also. So it's good to get together and, like you mentioned, have you tried this? Yep, we did this and it was successful. So if it was successful for Independence, maybe it'll be successful for Coffeyville. So yeah, to bounce those ideas off each other and make sure we're all, if it's there, and there's no sense in reinventing the wheel is all I can say.
Exactly.
So.
Well, I remember when it first came up, I thought this sounded like a waste of time. I think, Chris, you said something about it and we're pushing it. You'd went to some deal up in Independence or something and mentioned it. And I'm glad you guys are doing it. It's community involvement. Thank you. Go ahead,
Thank
Chris.
you.
How this whole thing got started was just by happenstance. I ran in, and I don't want to toot my horn, I want to toot the horn of your city commissioner, Mr. Klaflish. Happened to run into him and our county commissioner from Independence, McManus. I can't remember what it was, but some function in Independence, and we ended up at 3 separate tables in the same room. By the end of the night or end of the afternoon, we were all at the same table, and it just came up. Why don't we share information? Why don't we get together and try to save our respective people that we represent money? And that topic came up, and we brought it back, and it's really taken off, I feel. And I think that this is just the tip of the iceberg. And I think that there's many, many, many more ways that our communities, and I said this before, and I'm not going to go through the whole speech, but I might anyway, because, but there are many, many ways that we can get together and work together to save the taxpayers' money. Because ultimately, like I said before, what affects Independence affects Coffeyville, and what affects Coffeyville affects Caney, and what affects Caney affects Cherryville, and we're all in this big group of folks together called Montgomery County, and we will either sink or swim together. That's just the way that it is. And the more that we can get together and the more that we can collaborate and take the burden off of each other, the better off all our citizens are going to be. But the thing is, the public demands it. I hear it every day. We need to do things different. We need to get together and try to work things out, and the 150-year history of the North and South Montgomery County has got to be erased, because ultimately, at the end of the day, it'll be the North and South that fell together. And that's just how I feel, and that's how the public feels. And so I think this is a great thing. I look forward to hearing more about it, and I look forward to seeing a lot larger cooperation between the communities, because I think you've really just scratched the surface in this project.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the time.
Thanks, guys.
We appreciate your time.
Thank you.
All right. Coffeyville Public Library presentation. Katie Hill, Library Director, will give a presentation.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Please excuse my voice. I am recovering from a cold. So It's the time of year that I come and present our annual report. This is just some information for the city to see what the public library did for the community this past year. So I'll start with the folded handout. If you open the front cover, the first page is just our stats. So that is what the library did in 2017 by the numbers. So you can see there that we had 78,000 library visitors. The biggest number there, though, that I want to point out is the 17,000 computer logins. That's up by over 2,000 from the previous year. I think that is mostly a result of us adding 4 more computer terminals to the adult side of the library. So just having more equipment and allowing people to log in and having access to not only the internet, but word processing, if they're trying to create a resume, if they're doing trainings on the internet for different work. We have a lot of people that are coming from some of these industrial companies that need to do training. If they need to do some OSHA training or something like that, they can come to the library and get that done. So a lot of that is coming from people just who need to use the computers. Circulation, we had over 80,000 items circulated last year. And then the other big accomplishment that I want to point out is the 1155 e-downloads. That number is doubled from the previous year. So when I mention e-downloads, what I'm talking about are excuse me, audiobooks that you can download to your phone and listen to from your device. So you can I have it on my phone and I plug it into my car. There are the ones that you can download that you read. And then we also started a new service, which is a streaming video game service. So you can actually download and stream video games to your devices as well as your personal PCs. And again, that's all at no cost to the patron. And that number doubled, as I said, from the previous year. So we're very pleased about that. Our hotspot program is still going very well. We still had 256 checkouts last year for that, which is just it's as high as it can be. We only have so many devices and you get it for a week, so it's as high as that can possibly be. For this year, the library board actually opted to increase that to, instead of having 7 devices, we have 9 devices available for checkout. So very popular program there. On the insert there, we have the enhanced services. This was a major undertaking that we accomplished this past year. The radio frequency identification. That is where we tagged every single item in the building with a little tag, a little sticker that emits a radio frequency. Every single item has a separate frequency. So it serves as a security system, meaning if somebody were to try and take off with an item, it's going to sound the alarm. It also allows for self-checkout. As the picture shows, we have a nice little self-checkout kiosk. And then it also helps with inventory management. When this is huge for the staff because it allows us to accomplish an inventory in a very short amount of time. Previously, an inventory would have taken us, I think it took 9 months just to do all the scanning of the items. With this new system, we have a wand, not quite like a Harry Potter magic wand, but a wand, and you walk over to the shelf and you just wave this wand and it scans all the items like that on that particular shelf. So we've already scanned every single item in the building in a matter of 3 months. So it saves a lot of staff time, allowing us to use our time to provide different services, different programs, and also allows us to better know what's actually in our collection. So that's a huge accomplishment that we're very proud of. On the flip side of that, just a little brief story about our summer reading program this past year. And then also some of the grants that we received. We had two $1,000 grants for a total of $2,000 to enhance our Spanish language collection. And that has done exactly what we hoped it would do, which is increase the circulation of our Spanish language collection. If you read that little blurb there, increased by 62% just by adding new and updated titles. That is both books that are in Spanish as well as being bilingual books, so both in Spanish and in English. On the back cover there, the biggest thing I want to point out is the $1.6 million value That's one of those things that it's hard to describe, but when you put all of your circulation stats, all of your program attendance, all of the services that the library provides for the community, there's a nice little calculator on the American Library Association website. You plug all of that information in there, it spits out a value. So the library saved the citizens of Coffeyville $1.6 million if they would have had to pay out of pocket for those services elsewhere. When you flip over to the backside and you look at our financials and you see the tax revenue that we received, it's a huge return on investment as to how much money the citizens are putting towards their public library and what they're getting in return, regardless of whether they're using it or not. That's that information there. The other thing that I did bring for you today is if you look at our financials, you can see that we do receive some funding from Southeast Kansas Library System. Last year we received $19,674. This little infographic explains in more detail what the Southeast Kansas Library System does for us. It's kind of a weird situation. Not a lot of states do this, but Kansas is one where they have regional library systems. So obviously we are part of Southeast Kansas Library System. We have a combined shared catalog, which is that first bubble there, Seek and Find, S-E-K and Find. That allows us to have a shared catalog among 45 other libraries, which means 45 other collections are at our fingertips. We're part of a courier system, so it can take a day to 3 days to get an item depending on where it's coming from, which is a lot faster than if we have to order it from somewhere else throughout the state. Technology support, it's something that they provide that if we were to have to contract out with an individual company, it would cost us a lot more money. They value it at over $2,000 just for last year. Consulting and continuing education, they provide a lot of workshops and opportunities for myself as well as the rest of the library staff to go and listen to what other libraries are doing, do different trainings. They did an active shooter training last year. We've done cataloging workshops and some stuff that's probably very boring for you guys, but it helps us provide better services for the community. And then that $19,000 is the allocation, so at the top right. It's a base amount based on our population. We are what they call a major service center. So we're one of the larger libraries in Southeast Kansas. So we get a base amount, and then if we meet certain criteria, we get additional. So the base amount is around $10,000. So because we are offering certain hours, because we have Wi-Fi that's accessible 24 hours a day, the fact that I have a master's degree and that our board goes through so many hours of training per year, we were able to bump that allocation up to $19,000 from the base amount. And then they also help with summer reading and providing us materials and training for the children and young adult librarian. And then also the courier service I had mentioned. We're able to be on this courier. We can get stuff from Independence same day. It's something that we pay about $5,000 a year for that, but Southeast Kansas offsets that cost with a grant. So it's a huge benefit to be part of a regional system. And if you have any questions, more specific questions about that and how we work in tandem, I'd be happy to answer them. The other thing is that we do have to file a state report, which we filed last week. In order to get our allocation, we have to file that report. In order for us to get money from the state library, we have to file that report. And the city staff has been wonderful because we have to make sure that we're getting the right amount of money and according to what the state says. So it's been great working with both Kendall and Stephanie in order to ensure that, because we did have one little hiccup last year where we had to file an extra paperwork, but we got it, so we're good. And then finally, we do have 2 new commissioners. So I would be happy to offer to give you a tour of the library, or if you have any questions specifically about how the library financials work, the tax revenue, all that. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me or call me and we can set something up. So I'm starting to lose my voice. So do you have any questions?
Questions?
Thank you, Katie.
I got a question. Katie, it sounded like everything's going good, just like last year.
Yeah.
Any problems?
No, just, I mean, your average problems.
Okay.
You know, every once in a while, the door doesn't want to close, and I have to call the city and say, hey, can you come fix our door?
Okay,
But no, just average library problems.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to new business. Discussion and action to appoint one person to fill the unexpired term on the CRMC Board of Trustees. Applicant Amanda Cavanis. Would you please come up to the podium?
Hello.
How are you?
Good, thank you.
Give us a little background and why you want to be on the CRMC board.
Okay, my name's Amanda Cavanis, and I've worked for USD 445 since 2005. My husband and I had lived in Cherryville since 2003 when we got married, and I commuted back and forth to Coffeyville. And this last year in October, we purchased a home here in Coffeyville. I feel very invested in this community. I chose to bring my children to Coffeyville Public Schools and got permission to bring them out of district because I feel like this community is fantastic. I think something that sets Coffeyville apart from other communities right here in this area is the fact that we do have a hospital, and it's fantastic. And I want to be an advocate for that because I know with the changing laws and everything that happens, I want to see our hospital to thrive here in this community. And I feel like I've served our community with our families and our students for the past 13 going to 14 years, and I want to serve in a new capacity also. So I feel like it's something that I care deeply about this community, and I want to give back.
Great. Questions from the commission?
No.
I just want to say thank you for taking the step out there to do it.
My pleasure.
We
I
appreciate
agree.
it.
Well, we've just got one seat to put on that,
Correct.
so, okay.
I'll make a motion to appoint Amanda Cavanis to the CRMC Board of Trustees.
I'll second.
It's a race.
Motion was made by Mayor Bauer and seconded by Commissioner Doan to appoint Amanda Cavanis to an unexpired term on the CRMC Board of Trustees, serving to January 1, 2021. Commissioner Van Oster.
Aye.
Mayor Bauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Doan.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Do we want to require Amanda to stay for the rest of the meeting?
Discussion and action to appoint one person to fill an unexpired term on the Park Advisory Board. Applicant Marcus Gassler. Long time no see, Marcus.
Since getting off commission, I wanted to find things to do. If you remember, about a year and a half to 2 years ago, it was myself and Commissioner Martin's idea to kind of start this project. Since then, I listened on several of their speeches that they give, their updates. I think they're doing a fine job, but I think I could provide them a well shot in the arm that they may need to think more creatively, and also I may not agree with all of their decisions, but I feel that they need I think they need someone not to be a yes man, but to go in there with some fresh ideas, and provide an outlook. I work with youth. I know what they want. Our parks need to be continue to be updating, and I feel some of them has become stagnant, and it's been that way for a while. Every park, I think, needs attention. Some of them have great things, some of them don't, and I like to work with them on keeping them on the right track as well.
Good. Questions?
No questions.
Well, Marcus, I think it's good that you stepped up to help try to guide the Park Advisory Board in the direction that I think maybe you saw it going when you helped create it. So I'm all on board of you helping drive that.
I'll make a motion to, we appoint Marcus Castler to the Park Advisory Board.
I'll second it.
Motion was made by Commissioner Van Oster and seconded by Commissioner Taylor to appoint Marcus Castler to an unexpired term on the Park Advisory Board serving to January 1, 2019. Commissioner Taylor.
Aye.
Mayor Bauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Doan.
Aye.
Commissioner Van Oster.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Thank you, Marcus. Discussion and action to appoint one person to fill an unexpired term on the Planning Commission. Applicant Carla Lelisher. How are you?
I'm fine.
Good.
So what do you want to know?
Everything.
Everything.
What's your address, Carla?
Well, I live outside the city limits, therefore I'm really, aren't able to serve on many boards because it has to be an at-large position. So when I heard this on the radio, which give kudos to KGGF, because I heard about it the day it was going to be the last day, I thought, well, why not zoning? Kind of falls into what I'm familiar with and what I'm, I think, good at. So I thought, why not? I've never sat on one of your boards before, so it'll either be a good or a bad experience. And I think ultimately my goal, as I was driving around up on Big Hill, looking at those wonderful views and those great building lots, would be get some zoning done to maybe get rid of, have you guys let us build some houses up there, to get new housing up there. But I don't know if that applies in the zoning board or not, but it's an idea that I have had for a long time. I think you need to kind of consider the fact that that's prime location, prime views, and we need some new housing.
Great.
Okay, all right.
Any questions for Carla?
I have none.
No,
I'm
no,
sure Carla did us a good job.
Think so.
think so. Thank you.
Okay.
May I be excused?
I'd make a motion to appoint Carla to the, that's the planning, but is that zoning, planning
Planning Commission.
commission, but it's the zoning, right?
Yes.
Okay, the planning commission.
I'll second.
Motion was made by Commissioner Taylor and seconded by Mayor Bauer to appoint Carla Lelisher to an unexpired term on the Planning Commission serving to January 1, 2019. Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Doan.
Aye.
Mayor Bauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor.
Aye.
Commissioner Van Oster.
Aye.
Thank you, Carla. Ordinance number S-18-01, a first reading of an ordinance to approve the annual renewal of the 10-year property tax incentive for four-state maintenance. City Manager Kendall Francis will make comments.
Mayor and Commissioners, before you have, as you stated, the annual renewal of the 10-year property tax incentive for four-state maintenance. This, I believe we're in the final year of this. Since its inception in 2009, this incentive has undergone a little bit of changes, but the staff, has worked with the Department of Labor and the Board of Tax Appeals to ensure that we are accurately identifying the factors that are should be considered when reviewing this. And those four factors are the number of jobs that are created, those average wages, excluding those of the management, sales tax generated by the company, and then the benefit of the local sales and taxes generated locally. In your packet, you'll see four tables. The first one outlines jobs. State requirement is that one job be created through this incentive, and as you will see in the end of 2017, I and Tricia visited four-state, reviewed their documentation, W-2s and 1099s, and verified that they do indeed employ 34 employees, And so that meets the number of jobs created. Wages are Table B, and as you will see, their average median wage far exceeds the county median wage of $15.38. And their average salary, again, that excludes the owner's salaries, is $20.63 an hour. From that, we move quickly into Table C. The benefits of those wages and the sales tax generated from employees based on the Fair Labor Studies average, that those employees likely generated $14,724 in local sales tax in 2017 alone, and over $110,000 over the lifetime of this abatement. Currently, if you were to approve recommendation of the 100% tax exemption for this year, there will be a total of $82,202.29 in abatements. But with the combination of sales tax generated through the by the employees alone, and then including the Table D, which is personal property taxes that have been generated, that have been paid by Forestate over the life of this exemption, close to just over $197,000 since the start of this abatement. I think you will agree that they have met the requirements that are set forth by the Board of Tax Appeals, and that I would ask that you would grant 100% exemption for this year. Questions?
So, one question I have is on Exhibit A.
Can't hear, please.
On Exhibit A, base employment, 2008, 30 people. New job creation projected per, I don't know what APP stands for. Is that per year? So my question is they started with 30 positions. Should they have 41 positions in place?
They projected a creation of 11 jobs over the lifetime of the exemption. However, they have not hit the 11 jobs created. The state only requires that one job be created to meet the standards set forth. But it is true, when they sat down and projected out their business over the course of the next 10 years, they did expect to have essentially one job a year created. But although they did not create that amount of jobs, they created jobs that are paid exceptionally well.
Okay.
Okay, I'd like to talk about it a little bit. I sent all of you guys, including the city manager, this document, 6 pages. Have you got a copy of that, Kendall?
I do not have it in front of me, but I could pull it up.
Here you go, I'll just bring it to you real quick. And we've talked about this every year. If any of you guys want a copy of this, you can pass them down. On page 1, it is a document in the file. That file's about that thick. It's about 1.5 inches thick. There's a lot to read in there. And this first document shows in 2008 they had 43 employees. And then it goes down to 37, and 10, and on down to 11, 39, 38, 40, 35, and 35. So, and you got to read all this to understand it, okay? And it's just real clear in here, but one of the main criteria is exemption of the creation of new jobs. And then Angie Naden was in charge of this at the time. The letter from her to the mayor and the commissioners on April 22nd. And I assume this was to the commission, face to face. But I want to quote, it says, "The only way tax exemptions of this nature work is if the new jobs indicated in the application actually are created." Otherwise, the city finds itself in a situation of giving tax revenue away with no benefit received in return. The city's policy has been to allow companies 100% tax exemption for 3 years, with the remaining 7 years limited to 1,000 exemption for each new job created. And it goes on, there's more to read in the 6 pages, but to me, you know, by page 1, they start out with 43 employees, and now they're down to 34. They've actually lost 10 jobs. And I wrote in my letter to the commissioners and to the city manager, our sales taxes are down about $300,000 for the year. And just on our 1 cent sales tax bond that we just spent, I don't know, 10 or $12 million on, that revenue is down $100,000 on just the 1 cent sales tax. And everybody knows I've been against this four-state thing from the start. I feel like I'm representing the citizens. Yes, I've had some support from a few, not many people that with four-state, and everybody has friends, but I've had a lot of people talk to me about this one. And taxes is a point of contention. Everyone pays taxes, and I mentioned this in the past, that I felt that people, I will say this, I want to be clean, okay? Anybody who builds a new building should negotiate a tax exemption. I believe in that. Renew just left here. They've got their deal. But each deal stands on its own. And I just can't get behind this one because of the deal. A deal's a deal. And I feel like the city, you know, is in a little bit of a tight spot. Our mill levy's been going up the last 2 years. It's going to go up some more. And, you know, everybody understands where we're at on that. And I feel like they've gotten 90% of the tax exemption so far, and they're 10 jobs short, the way I look at it. I think they're 10 jobs behind. And, you know, they're a good company. Don't have any problems with them. But we're representing the citizens of Coffeyville. And I think if this deal was made with a bank, you know, or any other business connection, it wouldn't fly. You know, the deal wouldn't be a deal. And what I've seen in this setting here in this position and listening to it, you know, in city government, there's a deal made and it just gets softened and spun, and I feel that's what's happened. You listened about the sales tax and they buy truck tags and all that. There's a lot of spin. You know, all those deals were considered at the start, and those commissioners were read, you know, quote, the only way this is going to work if they create jobs. That's what it says here. And, you know, I do appreciate them being a business in town. We need businesses. It's a tough situation, but I just can't represent the citizens and the taxpayers more than the citizens, but the taxpayers of Coffeyville. I just can't support it. Last year, I said I would support a somewhat of a, I couldn't vote for anything more than 75% of it, but this year, with the state that our citizens is in, and our revenues are down, and, you know, we need more help from our businesses. We need more help from them, not less. And I can't support it, I'm sorry.
I would call your attention to Table C. The 2017 projection for local purchases subject to sales tax was, they projected it to be 58,000. However, actual purchases equaled 384,000. And so which generated $11,542 in local sales tax for our community. Total local purchases subject to sales tax was projected at the beginning of this to be 467,000. However, purchases to date equal $2,031,970. And so to the point of generating sales tax and our sales tax being down, it's staff's opinion that Four State has more than generated more sales tax, and additional revenues to the local economy by being able to expand here, and that is part of the basis for our recommendation.
Thank you.
While we're looking at the same table, we look at the projected sales down at the bottom, 81,802,000, and then the actual sales, 64,242,000. And then we get to the difference, and explain this to me. My math shows it's 17,559,917.
Commissioner, can you repeat that?
Okay, the same table, Exhibit C.
Okay.
Projected sales, I'm assuming was when this ordinance was started,
Correct.
81,802,000.
Right.
You go to the next one, 64,242,000, and then we have difference, 467,300. My calculation, excuse me, is 17,559,917. So does that mean they were 17.5 million under what they had projected?
Current projected sales and actual sales is what you're asking? I
think
seen your numbers for projected sales, but I didn't see.
Actual sales is right beside it.
Yeah.
So if you go up to, say, 2009,
Okay.
you have 7,936,000.
And their actual sales
6,850,000
gives you the difference of about 1.8. Yes.
So you go all the way to the bottom, and you have the totals.
Oh, that is and that is a question that Commissioner Van Oster asked as well.
Yeah.
That is not a cumulative total. There's an error in the formula. It should not have added those from 9 to 18. What it should be is just the difference between actual sales and projected sales.
Okay.
So that I understand what you're saying now, but Commissioner Van Oster had pointed that out this afternoon to me as well. There was I'm sure we've copied and pasted the formulas across the total line, and so it actually you could that difference that you spoke to, 17 million. Yes.
Okay. All right.
I have a question, and I've asked it, but I guess I'm not quite understanding. When this started out, the main thing was the number of jobs over the period of time to be created was 11. And reading the ordinance, that's all I see that the criteria was, correct?
I believe you're correct.
Okay. And the first 3 years, they get it irregardless. They call that the 3-year ramp period.
Correct.
Okay. So from January 12th to December of 2018, am I understanding correctly that then the advantage given is $1,000 per year tax exemption per job created?
Based on that original ordinance
Okay.
that we discussed,
Okay.
I would agree with your interpretation.
Okay. And then, of course, subject to yearly review to make sure the job creation is made. And the 11 jobs, it doesn't necessarily have to be one per year during that time, but at the end of the time, 11, correct? Be
Well,
created over the 10-year tax exemption period.
That was 11 jobs was their projection.
Okay,
Correct.
right. They indicated that, okay. I'm, why in somewhere in the middle, because it's hard for me to not go correctly by this. Do you know why maybe why it wasn't amended so that somebody like me that comes on board reads this ordinance, and then in the paperwork, in the presentation you've got here, we've gone to 4 factors. Cause it's confusing.
I would agree.
Okay.
You know, the.
And I know you can't tell, this was before you, but.
Yeah, this does predate me. I believe it was about 2014 that this original application was based on manufacturing-based
Okay.
organization. And so the criteria is more based on jobs, but that was the only example that city staff had to go off of. Midstream, so to speak, and I think it was roughly 2014. They realized that they should be basing it more on the criteria that affects a distribution and warehousing.
Okay.
And I believe Tricia was here at that time. Those in discussions with the Kansas Board of Tax Appeals, that they outlined these new criteria that we should be taking into consideration instead of just focusing simply on jobs. That's the best explanation that I have for you from what I've ascertained.
Okay. Would it had not been possible to have the ordinance amended?
I sure wish it had been. I can't speak to
I know,
why it
I
wasn't. However, since my time here, we have been following these guidelines. We've been doing due diligence physically, visiting with 4State. They've been very good to show us their documentation, and so that we are checking jobs, we're checking W-2s, 1099s, because contract labor does account for this based on IRS standards. But to earlier when Ben Hart was here talking about the EDX, he mentioned a cost benefit. And this is kind of what we're looking at. This is the cost benefit. It's not just jobs, because solely creating jobs, depending on the wages, doesn't really project the benefit that all 4 of these criteria do. And so based on those 4 criteria that are outlined by BODA, that's why we believe that they have. They're deserving of the full exemption.
And no doubt they've done all this. It's just, when that was not amended, makes it very hard
Puts you in the spot.
on us, because in essence, we're not following the document. And so when Joe Smith comes to us in so many years or something and says, well, how come you didn't follow all these, I mean, you let those go by, but you're not going to let me go by. That's, and I know.
I do understand that, I will say that going forward, that policy, in fact, she's already left. Sarah Steele will be working with us to amend the policy so that it is more cut and dried, and we won't, moving forward, won't have these discrepancies.
Okay. Because this was difficult, because to me, it's like looking at a balance sheet where your assets, I mean, are up here, and they're supposed to equal your liabilities and equity, and nothing's coming. I mean, I couldn't match some of the things up. That's not, it's just, and so therefore to have to account to the public, that's what makes it very hard.
It's been difficult. I can remember sitting out there in the audience 3 years ago, and they'd cut it back to a 75% discount rate instead of 100%. The commission only voted on 75%, and Jim Faulkner said, man, this thing's tough. I don't know what we're going to do next year. I mean, it's been a little bit of a quagmire. Okay?
Yeah, but I would agree. 1 + 1 doesn't necessarily equal
No,
2 when you're
no.
looking at this paper trail.
So I guess, I think I know where Jim's at. I would be more inclined to the 75% because, you know, if you just break them down equally, 25% for each 4 categories, they don't meet the number of jobs that they set out for themselves in this, right? So if we kind of garble them together and
We
say,
have
this
a-
is what we do.
We have a 0 here, we have a 75. Do I hear the next?
I mean,
Boys?
Before we make a motion, okay.
Sure, Tom.
The
Come on up, Tom.
owners are here if they want.
I can get clarification from Tom. I hate to be beating a dead dog with the jobs here, but there's a discrepancy between the report that you guys sent in February
I
5th.
obviously, sir, understand, you know, going back, and I would like to address the commission and take you back to the original effort of this. The original paperwork we was asked to file and fill out was paperwork that identified us as a manufacturing plant. And actually, the first year that we filed it, we couldn't be involved in it because the paperwork was wrongly filed and we had to wait a year. So we're actually a year behind. And that criteria required us to put those numbers down to be able to apply. And this was actually our second abatement situation. We successfully went through one of our expansions on abatement under that criteria, okay? But it was explained to me at the time we did the next criteria that we had to identify those kind of job numbers to be able to even apply. Trish, through her due diligence about 4 years ago, found out that the paperwork that was all put together was actually put together incorrectly for us being a wholesale sales organization. And the state identified, since we weren't a manufacturing organization and we were a sales organization, that for us to successfully be able to achieve the goals necessary for the abatement, that we only needed to create one job, but we had to show growth annually. Okay, it wasn't a jobs-oriented situation. Our job speculation come from a period of time of about 2007, 2008, where we were adding huge amounts of jobs in a great economy, okay? Obviously, we went through a period of time, as all of us, in an economic downturn where we didn't create those jobs, but we continued to have growth. We had minimal growth about 3 years ago, but we still had growth when the discussion was around. Last year, we had tremendous growth, and last year, Ford State enjoyed the largest year it ever had, with a growth of almost $750,000 in sales and almost $500,000 in payroll revenue. So we are enjoying our best year, creating 3 or 4 more jobs than was actually necessary for us to create if we would have had the correct application to fill out originally, okay? The reason why I was stimulated at that time by Leroy also to fill that out is I needed to fill that out to be able to get through the process, or that was at least his conveyance. When we turned that in, if you go back and check, they denied it, and we actually had to wait another year to reapply it, and there was some adjustments made. And at that point in time, I think Angie Naden was the one that assisted us through that process. But about halfway through this, and this has annually been a situation of us meeting the criteria that has been identified for our type of organization to meet, that those jobs are not there, okay? Our payroll far exceeds those jobs if they would have been minimum wage jobs, okay? We obviously, that payroll increase, even if we had made the 8 jobs at a minimum wage type job, we would have more payroll today with the 34 jobs than we would have had with 43 jobs. So the dollars are in place, and we have successfully met all 4 of those criteria every year that we've been through this abatement. And this year is our greatest year. We've had the greatest success in the history of our company.
Made some money, huh?
We did make some money.
Good, that's what we like.
And we've paid a lot of taxes, and we've paid a lot of payroll in our community. So I think that one thing that we've identified over all these years is that this thing has been, as Anne Marie says, kind of a confusing situation, okay? But the criteria that you're looking to hold us accountable for isn't our criteria. Our criteria is to be able to produce revenue for the community and tax dollars, whether it is in sales tax or property taxes or payroll taxes. Those taxes are all in place, and they're there because we're steadfast. We're involved in our 33rd year here in the community, and we'll be looking to add 2 more employees. We're just in the last couple of weeks been interviewing, and with a strong possibility of yet doing our 5th expansion in our facility. So we've got a bright future here in Coffeyville, and I think we've done our part as a community employer in paying a nice sum of taxes over the years. So I appreciate the commission's interest in Forest State. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Tom, real quick, I have a quick question. So this evening, is that when you realize that the criteria we're looking at is not the criteria that you're supposed to be held accountable for?
Trish actually brought that to our attention in about 2014.
Okay. So, and as a business owner, why, if that was my business, I would have stepped forward at that time and said, hey, we need to make sure that we're being held accountable for the correct criteria. Why are we in 18 now and we still have the same criteria?
I'm not sure why that's in your packet. Okay. I didn't. There should be some what Kendall called a cover page that shows you the criteria that we put together that exceeded where we were last year. You know, some of these figures that you were trying to dissect about sales or nowhere. We're if that cover page was shared with you, we're an $8 million sales company, okay, annually. Why that continues to get into your packet, because it's not involved in the criteria that Trish was diligent in her efforts to determine was what we really need to set and use as a guideline. I can't answer that, okay? Now, I would agree with Jim. Sometimes we don't much, but that packet, that is probably about that thick, okay? But a lot of that criteria, and we went over that the last 2 or 3 years, is criteria that should need to be ignored, because Trish successfully explained to the commission, and I know there's several new members here, okay, that criteria was completely wrong when it was first put together in the first years, and it was so wrong when it was initially put in, they refused it and didn't allow us to be involved till we reapplied the following year. And that would all be in the history of the packet too.
The cover sheet he refers to will look like this. It lists the payroll history, gross sales. It should be in your packet.
Is that the one that starts with the February 5th, 2016?
Right
under the...
No, and it's dated January 24th, 2018.
Okay.
It is a letter from Mr. Tipton and Mr. Roberts, I believe.
Okay, I got it. So I know you don't have these papers in front of you. From that packet that he's speaking about there to this document here, that's the February 5th, 2016, there's a large discrepancy in actual employees that you have. Do you have any explanation for that? Both papers are
I
from
can't
you.
tell you exactly what our employees were in 2008. I can tell you that in 2008, we had a tremendous amount of temporary employees. Okay, contract type work and labor and things of that nature. I'd go back to, you know, whether those people worked all in every quarter or only were summer help. If you go through and look at some of that stuff, we will bring in 3 to 4 more people in the summertime, but those a lot of times don't result in end of the year numbers, because they may have only worked in a few weeks or a couple months through the summer work.
Just contract help.
We restore about 190 gym floors a summer and lay a lot of carpet and things like that in education facilities. So those part-time people may have showed up in 2008 under that paperwork, which they wouldn't have showed up today. What you're seeing today would be full-time people that are working every day. And we didn't have 34 full-time people in 2008.
Yeah, yeah.
I would tell you that number would be 26 or 27.
And I think that's where the base number, if you look in the tables, the base number is 30, as calculated as full-time. The 43 would incorporate, as he referred to, several part-time or seasonal type help. But the numbers that we verified this year, although there is some contract labor included, they meet the requirements of full-time employment as set out by the IRS, because they are not, because they are reoccurring jobs. They were not, they didn't just come in and lay a gym floor and never work again.
So how many of the people of your count now are contract?
I would say 2 to 3, Jim.
And we have
maybe.
three that are calculated as full-time based on the criteria set forth by IRS.
So if you took those out, how many would you have now? If you took out the contractors, how full-time on your payroll, full-time do you have now?
I think 31 is the number.
That is correct.
31 to 32 is the full-time number.
Yeah.
I can't take you back to 2008, but obviously you have in front of you in 2013 our gross salary figure, excluding my partner and I. And then you can see where we are in 2017. And I can tell you that number has grown every year during the history of the abatement. So if there was a bunch of additional employees numbers back there, those were minimal wage, you know, people working contract labor for us in the summer, you know, running equipment on gym floors and things of that nature.
Don't have those records.
We still hire some part-time people in the summer.
I mean, back when we had them, you don't have the records of when that was.
I would, Jim, I'd say they're probably in that packet. I would think that the payroll figures for 2008 would be there, okay? Somewhere in that packet.
The only thing I could find was this 43 employees.
So in 2013, what you brought up, this paper says 40 employees. The packet that we got that he showed us says 28. So what you're saying is the difference there would be the contract employees.
That's right, and the fact that in about 2013, 2014, it was understood by Trish that due to us being a sales organization, the tracking those part-time people and the emphasis on the employees was not necessary because they understand we're not in the manufacturing business.
Yeah.
We're not truly producing jobs at a manufacturing line. Over the years, I've invited the commission people to come out, and I again invite you guys. Some of the commissioners acted on this several years ago, not really knowing what Fourth State did. As they came out and visited with us and got a little bit more understanding of what we're doing, they're understanding that, you know, obviously we're producing revenue through sales, paying some contract labor, some internal labor to do sales support type duties, but primarily it's a sales organization paying sales staff to go sell supplies, and then we have a administrative support group there in the front office that includes about 6 or 7 people. Okay? Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got a question.
Okay?
So in 2008, you signed a tax exemption for a property that you built, that the city approached you, you didn't approach the city.
That's right.
Right? They signed you up for a tax abatement and held you accountable for a tax abatement that the accountability was for a manufacturing operation, not a sales operation. And then later on, they found out that you should have been held accountable for a sales operation instead of a manufacturing operation.
That's correct.
They're the ones that presented you with the application, and come to you
Correct.
to offer you the tax abatement based upon a manufacturing requirement, when in reality you're a sales type business. That was on them. That wasn't on you, right? That's pretty much what I'm taking away from that. The thing
Justin,
is it was
Justin
just
made
my,
a comment, if I look back on that hindsight 2020, being in this situation as a business owner, should I investigated that more? Yeah, I probably should have, okay? Obviously, at that time, Jeff Morris, I think that was about the time Leroy left, and Jeff came and approached us. He had heard that we were thinking about putting a facility in Topeka, and he came and approached us, and he said, what would we have to do as a community to get you to build an addition here? And we sat down and negotiated the deal. Should have I investigated that more? Obviously, due to the last several years, I'd say yes, I should have, okay? Do I feel like we've accomplished and been successful through this abatement? I think absolutely the numbers tell that to be true, that we have been.
and I think you hit a good point there. You sat down and negotiated with the city on a tax abatement that, it's my takeaway that they were negotiating from a perspective that was incorrect from the very beginning.
It was.
There you go.
And
So they shouldn't have had any abatement?
No.
we shouldn't have
We're-
been allowed to be involved in that abatement as the application was put in place initially, because we weren't a manufacturing organization.
Exactly. So the responsibility and the
Trish is saying that's not right, that's wrong. Hey, guys, listen, can I say something with all due respect? I hear your point. You know, and then Trish wants to talk. We're talking a lot about this. It's all in the file. You guys had a chance to look at the file. Trish, correct me if they're wrong, and this is probably the only topic you and I have disagreed on, okay? But it's our choice as commissioners, representatives of this city, it's our choice what to do with this deal. We've all looked at it. Some of us have been here longer. We have differences of opinions. But at the end of this conversation, we can do what we want to do.
I understand that.
I just want everybody to know we can give 100% or we can say 0. We can do what we want to do.
But I think that before you make a decision based upon whether you're going to give them 100% or 0%, you have to make that decision based upon the totality of the circumstances.
Right.
And the thing is to be able to make a decision on the totality of the circumstances, you have to also know the backstory. And
Agreed.
having to know the backstory, you have to allow this conversation to take place.
I agree.
So the thing is I was just simply asking, and I've discovered that when we initially approached Fourth State Maintenance Supply and we negotiated with them to keep them basically building their facility here instead of somewhere else, and where somewhere else is, doesn't make any difference. It's just not here, and that's all that matters. And that was that we were negotiating from a perspective that was incorrect at the time. Whether we knew it or we didn't know it, who knows? I wasn't there. So, but I want that perspective, and then now you're going to inform me more information, and then that's probably going to go into the totality of the circumstances bucket, and I'll make a decision.
So the point I wanted to clarify, so when this agreement was made and they had this discussion, the state statute, the EDX, like I said, it's a constitutional statute, and there's 3 criteria, 3 different types of companies that are eligible for this statute. One is manufacturing. The second type of company that's eligible for this incentive is warehousing, distribution, interstate commerce, which is what they fall under. The third is bioresearch. So there's 3 different criteria, and the Kansas Constitution allows a company to apply for this. However, the city of Coffeyville, unfortunately, because we are a manufacturing-based city, when we had that ordinance that was in place, it only outlined this incentive under the manufacturing criteria. There was no criteria identified for companies of sales, warehousing, distribution, interstate commerce, nor bioresearch. So we discovered, oh, well, we're holding to the ordinance that was in place, and it's a great ordinance, but it applies to manufacturing. And so when I talked to Kansas Board of Tax Appeals and asked them their policy to clarify that policy, we actually went to the League of Municipalities. We sent it out to the listserv for city managers, and pretty much no city seemed to have a policy on this warehousing and distribution and interstate commerce, because there are so few companies that actually qualify under that specific criteria in the state of Kansas. And that's on, excuse me, my fault that we didn't go through and amend that ordinance to allow those two different criteria for warehousing and distribution and interstate commerce and bioresearch. And we need to get that done. And like Kendall said, we'll be talking with Sarah Steele to help us outline that, because we've looked and looked and looked and could not find an ordinance in any other city. I guess Wichita has something similar because they have started to get into that, but obviously we're not Wichita. So I wanted to give that clarification. So they did it right, but there was no ordinance to provide any background of what they were supposed to be held to, that the city was supposed to follow. And so Angie Ney she did a great job in helping them, and Jeff Morris and that team that helped them get it done. They just were following an ordinance that didn't match the type of company that they were. And so when I came in and we started studying the statute and I understood EDX and we gone through the training, realized that we were holding them to a very different type of criteria than they're supposed to be held to. And that's why the Kansas Board of Tax Appeals got involved and clarified. So when they did apply under the correct criteria, and they were approved under the correct criteria. Our ordinance just didn't cover any of the standards of what we're supposed to be holding them to. So right now, there's really no standards in ordinance. We're just following the guidelines that the Kansas Board of Tax Appeals provided to us, and that's what those four criteria are.
And I wanted to clarify something too, now that you clarified what you wanted to clarify. I wasn't insinuating that anybody did anything wrong. I was just trying to, basically, my point is this thing, at some point, this is the 9th year of a 10-year, or 10-year of the 10-year.
The 9th. We'll have one more of these after this.
This thing has went on for 9 years and it hadn't been corrected.
Well, it actually was corrected, Chris, 3 years ago.
But we didn't correct it through an ordinance and all this other stuff that we didn't. I was there for that.
And the last 2 years, after the third year, the last 2 years, Trish produced the explained the criteria, and it was passed, I think.
We corrected it like we're correcting it here tonight, in my mind, but we didn't go through all the legal mumbo stuff and write the new criteria and all this other stuff. That should have been done. Obviously, we need to do that because that's important, because we don't want to face this situation again if you know, whatever. But I think that from the beginning, this has been not exactly right, not anybody's fault, but it is what it is today. And I think that they're an asset to the community. And if they have met the criteria that the state says that they should meet, then they should receive the 100% abatement.
I just want to remind the commission that the paperwork that you're looking at was the paperwork that I was asked to fill out under the wrong criteria. Okay, the correct criteria was identified by Trish 3 years ago, and once we got that identified, I think that the commission is, well, I know the commission has obviously voted, exception of Jim, to support us because we have met the criteria the state has asked us to meet.
So, let me ask you, everybody knows I'm new here, so at the end of the day, Kendall, when we make a decision, what do we make it based off of? Do we make it based off of the ordinances that are in place? And it's not a trap.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm trying to, when I swore an oath to become a commissioner, I can't remember the exact words, but basically it was to represent the city in a fair and across-the-board way. And I don't know what I'm supposed to make my decision on if I don't make my decision on an ordinance that's in place. Now, I understand that the ordinance is incorrect, and that's not your fault. Like I said earlier, if I was a business owner, I'd have made sure it got changed. But it's a pickle.
I would just have assumed that when we identified the correct criteria 3 years ago, when we voted, even we had commissioners saying, you know, obviously we've now got this straight and organized, that we understood that that was the criteria and we would move from there.
The commission does have leeway to make a decision, and Jim already stated that. You know, you can vote however you choose to vote, and even though you don't have to use the ordinance as your guidance, even if they met it based on the ordinance, you still wouldn't have to vote to approve 100%, even though they met every criteria that ever existed.
Is the commissioners aware of how much the abatement's for?
It's about 100,000, isn't it?
88,000.
It's about 100,000 total.
For 10 years, so it's about 9,000.
Yeah, it's a little over 10,200, I believe, this year.
10,200.
And again, that cover page, looking at some of the dollars and taxes and things that we're producing for the community, I would believe that you can see that we're.
It's $10,174.
I want to say one more thing. You know, if you go back, this original commission based their opinion on those jobs. Would that commission have said, hey, we're going to give you a tax abatement if you're going to create one job? What if every company come to us and said, hey, we're going to create one job, we want a tax abatement? We wouldn't have a police force.
Jim, it did the first time. We successfully went through a 10-year abatement with creating no jobs and got it.
Well, that was then.
But that was still under the same criteria.
And we got to look at these deals each time. But all I'm saying, when this deal was made, Tom, and I'm speaking to the citizens that, you know, are a little bit upset about this. There are some citizens that don't think there should be a tax abatement because they think there's supposed to be 10 jobs created. You know, the deal was made in front of a board right here, commission, and this letter was read, this information, I'm sure it's in the minutes, but this letter is part of it. It's got everybody's signature on it. And we were going to get 10 jobs. We knew we were going to get tax for trucks. We knew we were going to get some sales tax.
No, you didn't.
Yeah. You didn't, we're going to have trucks?
Be careful about the soapbox.
It's not a soapbox, Tom. It's just a little bit of tax. Okay? It's just a little bit of tax. And this thing's been beat to death. But like I said a little while ago, we have the choice to do whatever we want to do as a commission. Like Kendall said, they could meet 100% of their criteria, and we could say no. The state put that, come back every year in for a reason. Why did they put that in for a reason? I'm going to ask Chris. Why did they do that?
Jim, I'm not going to argue with you.
No, I'm not arguing. I'm
just,
saying that I'm trying to explain to the public that, and I've read the file and I've beat it. I've spent a lot more hours, I think, than anybody. They put that in there because it's a contentious issue and it needs to be discussed. And taxes are this contentious issue and things change from year to year, and that's why they put it in there. So I think we've talked about it probably enough. If anyone wants to talk about it, I'm patient. But the bottom line is, it's our choice to do what we want to do as a commission, how we want to represent the taxpayers of this city, and a good company. How do we all want to treat him? So that's what we want to do. And sometimes in court, you split the baby. We're put in the position to be the judge and jury here, okay? Our main job is to set policy, okay? But this deal's a little bit different. And They got, they got 75% year before last, they got 100% last year. And you gotta look at the state of the city, and you gotta look at how good a corporate entity they are, and we gotta make a decision. And I think we've talked about it long enough.
Okay, let's make a decision. What do we want to do?
I'll go 75%.
I second that.
Yeah, we wanna hear what everyone else has to say. Justin?
I think a motion can be made. A second.
You're always
can
in a
be-
hurry, okay?
A second.
He
well,
didn't make a motion. He said, I think 75.
I thought
He
he
didn't, no,
mentioned-
he didn't make a
sorry.
motion. Justin, what are you thinking?
I think they've met 3 of the 4. They obviously haven't met the employees, so
Okay.
I'm okay with the
Okay,
75.
okay, fair enough.
Okay, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number ordinance number S-18-01 for the first reading of 75%.
Second.
Motion was made by Mayor Bauer and seconded by Commissioner Williams to approve ordinance number S-18-01 for first reading, and that would be a 75% tax abatement.
Correct.
Commissioner Doan,
Aye.
Commissioner Van Oster,
Aye.
Mayor Bauer,
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor,
I'll go ahead, yes.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Thank you. Ordinance number G-18-03, a first reading of an ordinance to amend the minimum rental standards. City Attorney Paul Kreitz will make comments.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. There are 4 areas that we are proposing to amend the rental standards. Those are highlighted in the ordinance itself. The additions are underlined. The parts that we are suggesting be withdrawn have the strike through. So the 4 areas would include excluding bona fide contract for deed or lease purchase agreements from application of the ordinance. I think administration already considered those types of arrangements to be accepted, but this makes it clear if you're selling a house on contract, that the house would remain in the seller's or in the owner's name and the seller's name until the contract was completed. But under those arrangements, a lot of times the maintenance obligations are put on the buyer, so we think those ought to be accepted, and this makes it clear. The second revision has to do with the time within which houses are to be licensed. There's a section of the ordinance that says all rental properties identified on applications received on or after July 1st shall undergo an initial inspection. Well, you see the verbiage in the ordinance that says that this ordinance would take effect. The rental properties in existence on the effective date of this article, application should be made within 90 days therefrom. Well, there's that gap in time that was not consistent. So we, just to clarify, made the provision for applications being filed by no later than June 30th. The next revision was, there was a concern, I think, made by some of the landlords that a tenant could come directly to the city and make a complaint without addressing it with the landlord first. So we added verbiage to say that if initiated by the tenant or on a tenant's behalf, the complainant shall provide information satisfactory to the enforcement officer that the tenant has notified or attempted to notify the owner or registered agent regarding the alleged violation as a condition of the enforcement officer acting upon the complaint. Administration thinks it's reasonable to require the tenant to go to the landlord first and say, hey, we've got a problem, rather than going directly to the city. And then lastly, the notice section was revised just to make it more consistent. There's a provision in the ordinance that says the owner or the agent has 14 days to address a complaint before an inspection occurs. The ordinance said that prior to performing a non-emergency inspection, the enforcement officer would notify the owner at least not less than 10 nor more than 14 days. So just to avoid that conflict in the ordinance, we are suggesting we change it to a 14 to 21 day notice. Those are the revisions that we are suggesting, and I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Who helped you with this, Paul?
Well, we got a lot of input from Ms. Leelisher, and so she was, I don't know if she was speaking on her own behalf or on behalf of landlords in general, but we tried to address her concerns.
I think those are fair changes.
Did you? So-
Could you just reiterate when that $500 will kick in on funds? What's the step before you kick that in?
Sure. And I mentioned this at the last meeting, I think, because I think there's been some misunderstandings about the fines. The $500 fines would apply if someone doesn't apply for a license. The license, again, will be required after, houses that are, licenses that are applied for after July 1st will have to undergo an initial inspection. Any application that is made before then, there's not going to be an inspection requirement. Unless a house is added after that date. So if a landlord operates without a license, that would subject the landlord to a $500 fine. If the landlord gives false information on an application, that would subject the landlord to a $500 fine. If the landlord owner retaliates for a tenant who makes a complaint under the article, that would subject the landlord owner to a fine. If the landlord fails to give the tenant information or notification that there are rental standards now within the city, that would subject the owner or landlord to a $500 fine. And then the per day fine comes into play when the landlord or owner would deny entry to a rental unit to the enforcement officer, who notifies the landlord or owner that a complaint's been received and an inspection needs to be made, or if the landlord fails to correct a violation and continues to rent the house.
Questions?
Yes.
Oh, no.
Got somebody else.
Mr.
Come on up. Mr. Fouts, yep.
I'm Keith Fouts, 108 North Parkview. 2 or 3 of you commissioners said that in some of the earlier meetings that you'd consider some amendments, and you have. I appreciate you doing that. The one area that's still a little concerning to me is the $500 fine that Mr. Paul has went over. It seems like so many may be trapped into that $500. If my question might be, is if somebody accidentally overlooks the fact that they didn't understand, we have several small landlords that are not here and may have not been keeping up with what's going on. It looks like you're going to get stuck with $500 unless, is this before a judge, or is this before, is it negotiable, or is it just cut and dried and that's the way it is?
I think it's too much. I've said that all along, but what do you think, Paul?
Well,
You've seen more of the system.
Yeah, it would be a fine situation before the municipal court judge. And of course, the enforcement officer has some discretion, just like a police officer would have some discretion in a traffic stop. If there's a...
So we can say up to?
No, not, if the enforcement officer decides there's a violation and reports it to me as a city attorney and I prosecute the offender, then if that person is convicted, they will be required to pay a minimum $500 fine. What I'm saying is there's going to be some flexibility in the enforcement. I think the enforcement officer, if someone was truly ignorant to the fact that there are rental standards and showed some remorse and went about to license the property immediately and started following the rules, I think the enforcement officer would take that into
Okay.
consideration.
Well, what about reducing it to 250 instead of 500?
That's
I mean,
that's y'all's call.
I want to point out one thing. If there's an alleged violation, number one, it's alleged. If you would be, and I'm not 100% familiar with municipal, but in my understanding, it's an alleged violation. You would be summoned to court. You would obviously get some type of reports or something like that you would review, and then you would have the authority to either A, prosecute that case based upon an egregious violation of the ordinance, or B, not prosecute that violation based upon the reports, right?
True.
So there's a checks and balances put into place there. The second thing is if it meets the first criteria through the checks and balances of the city attorney, then it goes through a second process of checks and balances where that person who has been summoned to court based upon an alleged violation would then either plead their case, and then the city would plead their case, and ultimately that case would be decided by a third-party judge. So it's not like, and then even at that point, there's an appeal process, correct?
There is.
Okay, and even at that point, if that person felt like that they were erroneously prosecuted or whatever, they could then appeal that as well. So there's a multi-step process before anyone would be fined. So in my mind, I think that the $500 fine is for the most egregious violations, people lying on their application, just flat not following the ordinance, period, or someone commits a violation and they report it, and then you go out there and shut their electric off or something along that line. These are the violations that need to have a stiff penalty, because we want to make sure that everyone, you're going to follow the rules. I'm convinced of it. But there's going to be some folks, I guarantee you, that aren't going to follow the rules. And they're going to try to circumvent this any way that they can, including up to just flat lying on their application, or just flat not getting a landlord license or rental property license. Those are the type of people that this stiff fine is aimed at, because you're absolutely right. It's a stiff fine, and it's meant to be a stiff fine, and it needs to be a stiff fine, because what we're trying to do is we're trying to gain voluntary compliance to these folks who are not going to want to comply. I'm sure you're going to comply. I'm sure Miss Leelisher is going to comply, but there's going to be some folks out there that are going to push the envelope. And that's what this is intended to do. But the people who are caught up in the system, who just make a mistake or something like that, there's going to be a multi-layered system that is checks and balance system, three, four step process, to where if you make a mistake, it's an honest mistake, they're not just going to come in there and shake you down for $500. They're gonna make sure that you get the due process, and everyone's treated the same, and everyone's treated fairly. So I just want to make that clear.
And Paul, will you clarify? I know we've talked about this before, but before you even get to the court process, we're not gonna come out and do or the inspection officer's not gonna come out and do an inspection, find a violation, and then you're going to court, and then you've got a $500 fine.
Correct.
I mean, there's a process in between there, and basically, if somebody is blatant and says, yeah, you found a violation, but I refuse to fix it, that's when the fine comes in, correct?
Correct.
So there's multiple steps in between.
Yeah, there will be no inspection of houses that are licensed before July 1st. Those that are licensed after July 1st would undergo an initial inspection. And those for which the city receives valid complaints would undergo the inspection. And then, of course, the landlord is notified or the owner is notified about the inspection, given a chance to remedy it before the inspection is made. So hopefully it would be addressed at that point. The court only enters the picture on, like Commissioner Williams said, the more egregious and outrageous situations where there's just a lack of compliance. I think word is getting out there. I happened to run into a person from Missouri that owns at least a couple of rental properties here in town. And I mentioned to her that the city had rental standards, and she said she was aware of that and she appreciated it. She has higher end rental units in her view, and was appreciative that the city had adopted rental standards, and was already aware and had talked to Cindy. So somebody's doing a good job of getting the word out there. So, you know, there hopefully won't be a lot of landlords that are just caught unaware that the city is implementing rental standards.
Well, what's wrong with 250?
It's up to you all. Nothing wrong with 250 if that's what you all want to say. There's nothing wrong with 0 to 500 if that's what you all want to say. We're just carrying out your wishes as far as the ordinance verbiage is concerned.
You know, I would recommend that you stay with the 500. These are willful violations. They're either providing false information, they're not providing the information to the tenants to make them aware that standards exist and that there is a complaint process. So, or they're refusing to get licensed and still try to rent homes. So they're circumventing our system, or it would attempt to. Those are willful and need to be met with something substantial. Or if you refuse to correct a violation and then continue to rent it, if you refuse to fix a violation, that's your business choice. But then you've given up your right to make money from that, and if you continue to do so, you should be penalized and penalized severely.
Anything else, Mr. Fouts?
With regard to that, each time you also assessed a court cost, a court fee? In other words, you got $500 and
no, if somebody is charged with like the daily fine, the $500 per day fine, that there's still one court cost.
And that's $100 or so.
105.
It just seemed like a lot of money, you know.
It is a lot of.
Go
ahead.
I don't think any of the good renters in town, me included, okay, are gonna have the $500 fine. I just seem, I've heard a lot of talk about it. Keith's talking about it. A lot of talk. I just think it's too much money. We can always raise it later. We can always drop it later. But I think 300 a day maybe, to start with, and then go from there, experiment with it a little bit. A lot of the people out there here, 500, the city's trying to make money, and I think it's too much money, but guys do what you want to do.
I don't think the city's, I think you, I'm sorry, go
No,
ahead.
that's okay.
I think you said it best the other day. Yeah, you. Yeah. I think that, just like you said, we spent $1,754,800. Their $500 ain't gonna. We're not trying to make money $500 out of whack. That's not the purpose of this. The express purpose of this is to bring people into voluntary compliance with the wishes of the citizens of Coffeyville. And the citizens of Coffeyville want these issues addressed, and we addressed them. And the thing is we put a very stiff fine on it. And there's a purpose for that very stiff fine. That very stiff fine, like I said earlier, and I'll say it again, is not to make money, because we're not making money at $500 a whack. The thing is this stiff fine is purpose is to bring these people who are willfully going to circumvent or snub their nose at the wishes and the of the people, of the citizens of Coffeyville. And the thing is, they want it. We recognize that. We passed the ordinance, and we put a fine in there that's gonna get somebody's attention. And that's exactly what it's meant to do. And I'm good with $500.
I'm good with 500.
I agree.
We need to let them know,
Well-
the ones that are doing the wrong, that we mean business.
Well, what you have also here, I don't know how many landlords are here. 2?
3.
Three?
3 in the room. 4.
If the word doesn't get out to the little ones, like those that have 1 or 2 or 3, and they miss the deadline, they've spent $500. If they don't sign up as a landlord with the license fee, they've spent $500, is what you're saying.
Okay, so let's address that. I mean,
Well,
Now-
you could willfully not sign up and only have to pay $250 for willfully not signing up and continuing to rent substandard facilities to people. And it's my belief that it will be those who have substandard rentals that will be looking to circumvent the situation and the system, because they don't want to be subject to any kind of acknowledgement of the state of their properties. They don't want their tenants to have any recourse in filing a complaint. And so whether it's accidental or it's intentional, who are we to say? And so I
But
would
if the compliance officer thinks it's an honest mistake,
There
then they don't have to.
we're going to use some common sense. I'd like to think we try to in most situations, and I think we err on the side of the $500 because you can willfully neglect signing up or getting a landlord license, and if you're caught, you should pay for it. And so I guess that's my thought on it.
so what are we, I mean, if a landlord in Missouri has heard about this, I find it hard to believe that a landlord in town wouldn't know. But what steps are we going through to make sure that the
Well,
landlords know?
as soon as the ordinance is passed,
Uh-huh.
we need the amendment, we need it to be completed, so we have one more reading. Then approximately March
The first week
first
in
week of
March.
March, we will put together all the information and mail it out to the list of landlords that we have, and we're working on that daily to try to gather names. We're asking people, and quite honestly, it's going to be a little bit of word of mouth, because some people are going to tell on the other person, because if they have to pay for it, they're going to make sure the other guy's going to have to pay for it too. And so we think we're putting together a pretty extensive list. All this information will go to the media, so that we can get that word out there the best we can. Can I guarantee 100% coverage? No. But again, like I said, we're going to use some common sense. I think it will be evident the ones that just simply, they just truly didn't know.
And they don't have to be occupied. We pay the $2.
They don't have to be occupied. They don't have, but if you don't want to, you don't have to pay the $2, but it's not eligible to rent until it's listed. So
No, you can pay the $2. It doesn't have to be occupied.
that's true. It does not.
And then it doesn't have to be inspected.
That's true.
Okay.
Good discussion.
Well, I have a couple more points.
Oh, good.
Okay.
There's a couple that has some rentals, maybe, I don't know, a few. And there's some that have many. We have just really a few. And there's some maybe has only one or two, hoping to get a little money extra coming in. That's why they have it. Maybe some tax write-offs too. But this couple I'm thinking of, she's going through hospice care. And he has not been able to come to meetings. He's preoccupied with her and their situation. So you're saying that if they don't happen to know about it or someone like them, I've tried to include many that I know that this is in place or it's in work, that he's not a good candidate perhaps to making sure he's got the sign up, the license and all this, you know. But you're saying that if someone comes to you and says, I didn't know, then you're saying that they may have an excuse to avoid that $500 fine?
I'm saying the building official is going to have some discretionary powers to determine if we believe that to be sincere.
You'd have to take their word for it if there's no other way.
You know, and for as far as people who may not be able to get in here, this information will be on the website. It currently is on the website, and it's in my notes. I was going to talk about it a little later, but if you were to go to the community development tab, it's listed under there. The rental standards are. We're working on the application. That will all be finalized when this is finalized, and then it'll all be sent out together. But the application will be on the website, and you can download it and fill it out and send it in that way. And so, or if you just search rental standards, put rental standards in the search box, it's a quick way to find these two.
Keith, if you have a list of landlords that you know, you can get those to me. And that way we'll make sure that they get the mailing.
Some of them may not be current, but I can give you what I have. I was just curious too. You'd mentioned earlier that the ordinance was based a lot on what Independence has done. Do they also have a 500 minimum?
I honestly can't.
I don't know that answer.
Tell you.
Good question.
Their ordinance is online as well, but off the top of my head, I don't know.
We'll look into that, find out.
I've had trouble with my Cox for about the 2nd of this month. And they've redone their email system, as I understand, and I still am getting multiple copies of emails, so and there's a lot of folks that don't have internet or computers, you know, it's all pen and pencil. There's just one small point here.
Hey, back to that 500, we were talking about that down there at the trailer court there that night when we had our first meeting, and I think that $500 deal came up. Whose idea was that anyway?
I believe that was mine.
Thank you, Chris. I think we injected that. So I don't know, that's a good question.
I think that's accurate. In fact, I think 1,000 might have been floated out initially, $1,000 fine.
Well, back to the mom and pops, that would break them. They can't afford something like that.
But would they refuse to comply? I mean,
I
it
don't-
doesn't go out to everybody.
I don't think they would, but as you say, some may. But
I'm just hoping there's enough in the system, you know, for the person that didn't know, you know, an honest mistake, you know.
Yep.
Anyway.
and
I
just
think you're too high on it, 500, but you guys want to do it, let's roll with it, okay? What else you got, Keith?
just one brief comment here. I noticed that you can cut off your electric or city services after 15 days non-payment. Is that correct? Unless temperature
Stephanie just stepped
next
out.
24 hours is going to be below 32, then you won't. So if that's 15 days there, then if we get somebody that's, let's say we get a situation where it's gonna take a whole new, heating and air conditioning system, I don't have the funds. So would have to have them move. I could evict them then in 15 days or the 30 for non-payment of rent. Even though I've got a offense of needing to replace the heating and air conditioning, is this going to be a retaliation toward me?
I don't understand the question. Could you
And-
repeat that?
well,
I think what he's getting at, and we've kind of addressed this before, in that circumstance, you come to whoever and say, you know, this is the offense, I want to fix it, I don't have the funds right now, but this is my plan. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I would say that's partially correct.
Okay.
And I will tell you that we have this very situation that is happening currently. A repair is not going to be made. However, that person will no longer be able to rent that property until that repair is made. So, now if they have a situation, that it can be fixed in 30 days and they intend to do that, we're going to work with them in those regards and try to work with the tenant to make certain that those are acceptable terms. But if it's just a simple refusal that we're not going to do that, then that is something we talked about. It will require tenants to find new residents, and like I said, we're experiencing that right now. That very situation.
So the landlord would not be held.
Now he
with a
has indicated
$500
he will not
fine?
be making the repairs. Well, and then he has lost his ability to rent that property until that repair is made.
Until it's repaired or
Yeah.
replaced,
Hey,
whatever.
We're not trying to be punitive. We're trying to provide minimum adequate rental facilities. I'm not out to find somebody, but I'm out to either persuade them to make the repairs and bring it up to minimum standard, or they're going to lose the privilege of being able to rent that residence.
Well, I'm probably thinking of the downside of things. It's a little hard to trust governments anymore, whether it's local, state, or federal. So maybe I'm overreacting somewhat. But again, I do want to thank you for keeping your word that you'd consider some amendments. And I think the ones that Carla has placed before you, they're important and they're good. And
And while we're talking about this, you don't have to have air conditioning, do you?
No.
But you have to have heating.
Yes.
Okay.
thanks for your time and
Thank
listening
you.
and your comments.
Thanks, Keith.
Thank you, Keith.
Charles Weed, 207 West New. One point on there that's kind of slipped is, what he's saying is he's got a rental property, he can't get the repairs done. How does he get rid of the tenant if the tenant does not want to move? That's one loophole in this section you missed. You know, the tenant's been there for whatever how long. They want to remain there even though the structure is not rentable.
This was discussed.
Yeah.
I think Carla brought it up once.
Yeah.
Didn't you, Carla?
Yes.
Carla brought it up once
Yeah.
here, so it's not that,
Yeah.
but what is the answer? I never did hear the answer.
That's just it, is, you know, you've got it where you get, I haven't heard anything where he can force that tenant to move after the building becomes unlivable. You know, we need to get that clarified before.
It is
Well,
clarified. It's
it would
clarified in the Kansas statutes.
Yes, but it would seem to
There's
me
a whole
that if the
process of how you get people out of your house.
if the tenant wanted to remain in the house, he would not make the complaint and gets the landlord to start with.
That's right. Mandatory inspections after July, because they're now, you'd be fine, but after July, if you put a tenant in after there and it's inspected and doesn't pass,
You know, there's a loophole there.
Are
need
you,
to-
are you a landlord?
Not in Kansas,
Okay, so.
but I've run into this in another state.
So if you were to evict somebody without all of this in place anyways,
Yeah.
and they refuse to leave, what would you do?
Well, see, that's just it, well, not me, but a friend of mine got stuck with this.
Uh-huh.
The people were in the house was, basically was condemned.
Mhm.
But the state law said, you know, as long as they paid the rent, they were allowed to stay there. And with that state, if they went up and they offered cash, and you refused the payment, the state considered it payment in full.
That's,
That,
The-
yeah,
the
I
thing-
know.
the
Some
thing-
states are weirder than others.
okay, the thing is though, is
You know.
there's a whole bunch of books with Kansas statutes in them on how to get people out of your house. And if you want them out of your house, you just gotta
Thing
go,
about it is none of them, how do you get rid of them in 15 days?
you just have to read the books and it'll tell you how to do it.
The one I saw, I think the shortest procedure I saw was a false entry, and it took them 2.5 years.
Okay.
You know, we need to address that in there.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Charles. Any other? Yes?
To prove that they've been given the minimum standards, can I just incorporate that in my lease, or do they have to physically sign the minimum standards paper, which requires me to make a whole lot more copies and keep them attached to my lease?
I don't know, I just can't be in the lease that I've received a copy of it, or I understand that there are.
That's my question, which is
Yeah.
gonna be a study
They,
session.
they can I say something? They signed the lease, obviously, right? I think that would be an excellent idea. That way you have proof that they were given copies of the, ordinance.
Well, with the lead-based paint disclosure, it doesn't work that way, they still have to sign the form, so that's why I was wondering, if it's okay to put it incorporated in the lease.
Absolutely.
I think that'd be an excellent idea.
And all it needs to say is they understand that there are minimum standards. They don't have to have a copy of the minimum standards.
Yes, they have to
Yeah,
have
they
a
do.
copy.
Oh, they do?
Have a copy.
You have to provide them a copy.
Oh, so that's part of the lease.
You pick those copies up at the city,
Huh?
are you gonna make those copies?
Jim will. Anything else?
Any other, oh. Any other questions regarding ordinance G 18-03? Seeing none, I'll make a motion to approve ordinance number G 18-03 for first reading.
Second. Second.
Motion was made by Mayor Bauer and seconded by Commissioner Williams to approve ordinance number G-18-03 for first reading. Commissioner Taylor,
Aye.
Commissioner Doan,
Aye.
Mayor Bauer,
Aye.
Commissioner Van Oster,
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Resolution number R-18-07, a resolution to authorize the sale and conveyance of certain properties to Assisted Living at Windsor Place LLC. Sarah Steele, Gilmore, and Bell will make comments. I don't think they're here.
I guess,
I-
I guess I
I'm
got
thinking
nominated
that,
to do it.
City Manager Kendall Francis will make comments.
Well, obviously, I don't have this in front of me, but essentially, Mayor and Commissioner, what we have here is we're coming off the ending of an IRB that was issued to Windsor Place Assisted Living, the Assisted Living on 8th Street. And this is some housekeeping, so with an IRB, the city retains, basically becomes owner of the property during the term of the IRB, of the Industrial Revenue Bond. However, like I said, that has been paid off, and so we are conveying ownership to Windsor Place. Monty Kaufman had intended to be here to say something and to give his appreciation and thanks to the city for working with them over the last few years. However, something work-related had come up. He wasn't able to attend, and he asked that I would convey his appreciation and thanks to you. So, you know, I would just ask that you would approve the resolution. And like I said, this is strictly housekeeping at this point. the bonds have been paid off and the agreement has been met fully.
Good.
I got a question.
Mhm.
Is this being are we videotaping this meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, it's not going out over there on TV, I've been told, but
We,
we are videotaping it,
I'm told it is going out over air, there's no sound.
okay?
Yeah.
But, so the recording's got
And
the
we're,
voice
and
on it?
we're streaming it live as well, but
We're getting a nod of the head in the back, yes.
we're not understanding, we don't understand what on Cox's end has
Okay,
not allowing the sound.
okay. But Chris is confirming that we do have the camera with the voice
Yeah.
for the legal issues. Okay, thank you.
Okay, with that said, I choose to approve resolution R-18-07.
I'll second it.
Motion was made by Commissioner Dunn and seconded by Commissioner Taylor to approve resolution number R-18-07 for adoption. Mayor Bauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Commissioner Van Oster.
Aye.
Commissioner Taylor.
Aye.
Commissioner Dunn.
Aye.
Resolution number R-18-08, a resolution to approve executing the January 1, 2018 through December 31st, 2020 memorandum of agreement with the International Union of Operating Engineers. City Manager Kendall Francis will make comments.
Mayor and Commissioners, before you is the MOA for IUOE, so a lot of acronyms there. But this is a tentative 3-year agreement, which is the maximum allowed by state law. The highlights of the agreement, it does provide for a 1.5% base wage rate increase for the representative employees of the IUOE. It does also identify a handful of additional positions to which we've made market wage adjustments to bring them up to competitive wages as compared to our market cities. There's some language in there that has changed with federal law as far as nursing mothers, couple other things that have been impacted by, like I said, federal law. Make some clarifications in wording as far as bereavement leave, which we have standardized across the all of the bargaining units, and then a couple of additional benefits in regards to uniform shirts, and then discounted golf and swimming pool passes. I know you've had this for a little while and have had an opportunity to look at it. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer whatever you have. I do think this is a good agreement. I appreciate IUOE's their willingness to work with us. Also, I will point out that as we have went past the first of the year for this agreement, we've been working off the old agreement. That pay will be retroactive to January 1st.
Yep.
So.
So is that 1.5% each year for 3 years?
No, that's this year. And then the positions that we've made some wage adjustments are actually, and you'll see in the table that's provided, the positions and the breakdown over the 3-year period.
Okay.
I agree, I think this is a good contract.
I don't have any questions.
No questions?
Very good.
I move to approve resolution number 18-08.
I'll
Sec-
sec,
Go ahead.
I'll second.
You're getting quicker.
Motion was made by Commissioner Williams and seconded by Commissioner Van Oster to approve resolution number R-18-08 for adoption. Commissioner Taylor.
Aye.
Commissioner Van Oster.
Aye.
Commissioner Williams.
Aye.
Mayor Bauer.
Aye.
Commissioner Dunn.
Aye.
I was asked to take a 5-minute break.
Second.
report.
Mayor and Commissioners, couple things. Obviously here we're City Hall. We have scheduled the final walkthrough for the 15th. So PEC will be back and meet with Decker Construction to look at all the final changes, see if there's anything left to be gone over. We're still tweaking some things internally as we see by the video presentation tonight, but those are things that we'll get well in hand. We did have a lot of our board openings were filled, but I believe we still have one for the Montgomery County Community Corrections position. They're still taking applications for that. I believe it was the last meeting, as we visited about utility bills and the complaint procedure, it asked that we would put together a procedure for handling complaints. We're still in the process of getting that finalized. I do have the complaint form in front of me. We've reached out to other cities to try to get some best practices, and honestly, we got zero responses. So I think everybody's probably struggling with some of the same things. The responses we got were, once you get that information, please send it to us as well. And so. The one thing that I will say is that to really be considered a complaint, they are going to have to be willing to put it into writing. So a citizen to come up and say, you know, I'm mad my bill's high. Okay, well, put it down, and then we'll follow the procedures that we have in place. And it will. What we're finding difficult is that it can't just be A, B, C, D, because one complaint may trigger a first initial response, where a different type of complaint the first step may not be the same. So we are putting that together, and I think we're pretty close to having that finalized. In that vein, I do want to speak to one thing. We were asked to, we were approached by a citizen concerning high utility bill, and we said that we would test that citizen's meter. That was performed. Those tests came back both from city staff and a third party that the meter was 100% accurate. And we have followed up with that citizen and tried to ascertain some of the reasonings why. It was higher kilowatt hour usage one year to the next, but I just wanted to assure commission that we were doing our due diligence and following up with these citizens and trying to assist them the best that we can. I guess I can cross rental standards off my list. I think we hit everything that I was going to visit with you about. We do have a meeting tomorrow with JCI Johnson Controls to look at review the scope of the AMI project. I think I indicated to you via email that we'd had some meetings last week, and the scope was too broad and quite frankly too expensive for our comfort level. So we've asked them to refine that and try to target more specifically what we really want. And so we'll be meeting with them tomorrow. Our goal is still to be here, I believe, next month with recommendations so that we can move forward. We've made some new hires within the city. We have a new police officer, Michael Purvis, who will be starting the 20. I didn't write the number. I didn't write it down. I should have. We do have a building official who has accepted the position, Tyler Strickland. And then we've also made an offer, and it was accepted for a customer service rep, Lori Reed. So we're trying to get some of these holes filled. We fill up some of these offices that we have here in City Hall. And then as we continue in that vein, as we stated a month or so ago, we were going to leave the police hiring open. and just schedule out for the next 3 months, try to shake things up a little bit. So it's already time for another round of testing. So the 24th, we'll be bringing in some more applicants to test them, the first initial written and physical tests. And at the same time, we're scheduling interviews this week for the last round. So we're continuing to get some applications, so we think maybe we're headed in the right direction, and the change up was seems to have been good for us. Just make a mention that PD was awarded a grant for teen seatbelt patrol. So February 26th through March 6th, they will be specifically targeting teen seatbelt use. And so remember to buckle up. Not that they won't ticket other people, but the focus is going to be on teenagers. We continue to work on a citizen survey for strategic planning. And, I would encourage you as commissioners, if you have some areas that you would like to hear some citizen input upon or specific projects to try to get a pulse of the citizens, if you could send that information to me. It's something we beat to death today at staff meeting, trying to really refine the scope and how to ask intelligent and meaningful questions in a way that will evoke meaningful answers. And so it continues to be a work in progress, but we think we've made some headways with that. And so again, that's kind of what we're hoping to be the beginning stage of our strategic planning process that will follow with meetings with the commission and city staff. And then commission orientation, something we've been talking about. We've kind of set a date. We'd like you to look at Tuesday, April 3rd. It's the first Tuesday in April. The thought is we'd start about 6 o'clock. It'd probably be a working meeting. Staff will present to you about their departments, give you, a good understanding of what their department duties are, what it encompasses, give you a chance to ask questions, an opportunity to have a better feel for the duties of staff and each of their departments under them. So I will be sending that out as a reminder, but I think that's kind of the date that we have set on. I would entertain questions.
I have no questions.
I have a question. Let's discuss this survey
Okay.
a little bit. What is the scope of this survey, and what is our intentions with it, and how are we going to conduct it? Are we going to mail it out to everybody? Are we going to do it online? Or
Well, let me answer that last one first. We're still uncertain of exactly the best way to get it out. Obviously, online has its benefits. It's easy. It's relatively inexpensive. Although you open yourself up to anybody with an IP address that can fill it out 1,000 times, and they can live in, Canada, so to speak. A more targeted mailer there is some expense involved with that, but you can, like I said, you target who gets it. Is it just going to be the citizens within the city limits? Is it someone with a Coffeyville address? We're a little uncertain. I think we're going to, rely on some input from the consultant as to some of the things that they've seen in the past as far as what gets the best results. We've also talked about maybe a survey per se isn't the best way to do it. Maybe, maybe it's a little bit more personal and we're a town hall meeting style or something. So we're not specifically locked into survey, but that's the term we're using right now. As far as the intent of it, it is to get citizens' input into the future direction, some of what they see as priorities or what they believe priorities for the city should be. And again, that's where crafting the question